But as you get older, your balance is bigger, the stakes become a bit higher.
A lot of people aren't confident when it comes to being prepared for retirement.
You're often retired as long as you worked.
Hi, and welcome to Super Insider, the podcast where we talk things all super and retirement. I'm your host, Josh, and I'm joined by two of my wonderful colleagues, Ruth and Kane, today. And what we're going to do, guys, is in the next 20 minutes, we're going to try and provide a condensed version of a program we've been taking on the road. Kane, can you tell us just at a high level what that program is and maybe the four key things that we cover in it?
Sure. So we've got a retirement essentials program, and we've got four different topics that we cover there: how to plan for your retirement, how to grow your retirement savings, how to pay yourself in retirement, and then how to thrive in retirement.
The important thing to note as we go through all of this is please be aware that what we're discussing today is of a general advice nature only. So if we do raise any questions for you, that we hope we do actually, just know that you can reach out to us, you can investigate more on our website and seek out more guidance and advice. Now, before I do want to get started, I just want to read some stats here that during the last 12 months, our wonderful education team has delivered over 100 hours of retirement planning and investment content to nearly 20 locations to over 45,000 participants. Isn't that incredible? The thing that we know, though, and the reason why that's important is because we know through our research a lot of people aren't confident when it comes to being prepared for retirement. They often don't feel they have a plan, and most of them actually don't feel that they have sufficient amount to actually have in retirement. Ruth, Kane talked about those four big areas that we focus on. Can you talk a little bit about plan? What do we discuss in planning?
Planning is all around just setting the scene. And the one thing it's important to note is planning starts very early. So you really don't have to wait until a year before retirement or 6 months before retirement to start planning. In actual fact, you should be doing it very early on in your career. So planning is helping people to understand what is it you want to do in retirement, translating that into a balance and then translating that into an income, and really helping people determine whether or not they're on track for what it is that they want to do during their retirement. Because remember, it's going to be different for literally everyone.
There's a lot of tools that we talk about in these sessions, Kane, a lot of information people can refer to. What are the main things that we refer to, though, if people are just trying to get a picture in their head of what their retirement plan might look like? What are the things that we suggest they think about, but also where they can go to get a better idea or a better picture?
I think, to Ruth's point, that is the most important thing for retirement planning, is get a plan. Too many people do focus on that age and amount, but you've got to think about, what do you want to do?
Yep.
And it's, what does a year look like? What does a month, what does a week look like? Do I want to travel overseas? How often? How long? Do I want to eat out frequently at my favourite restaurant? How often do I want to upgrade my car? So you need to think about those details, and then, to Ruth's point, then put a price tag to it. Then you can start to think about, am I on track? And that's where we'd encourage people to use what we call the retirement projections calculator. So that will work, though, if you've got a plan. If you've already worked out what you want to do, what age you'd like to retire, how much you think you need, then you can use these calculators to put your own situation in there and see, am I on track?
Do we often see members coming to these events with either a vague plan or maybe no plan at all? Are they coming in really starting from scratch, Ruth?
Some are coming in starting from scratch, and some are actually coming in with a vague idea as to what it is they want to do, but they have no idea whether they're on track to do it. And that's what a program is about. It does cater for everybody, whether you're here having this conversation for the very first time, or whether you're fairly established in your conversations and you're just wanting to cross your T's and dot your I's. So it's really just personalising the conversation to you. And Kane and I were talking before the podcast about how different it will be for everyone around how much you need and what you want to do. You know, one of the things that we picked up was, if Kane during retirement wants to spend a lot of time with his family, Well, then he just has to hop in his car and drive half an hour down the road. That is not the case for me. My family are all in Ireland. So it's a very big expense for me, one that Kane won't have. Kane might have golf subscriptions and things that he likes to do in retirement that I won't have. So it is so important, and that's the purpose of the programme, really focusing in on what your retirement plan is, not anybody else's.
I finally know where that very subtle hint of an accent comes from. I've always been curious. So, can you go through some of that planning? You start to get a picture, maybe using the forecaster. Hopefully for some of our members, they go through that experience and go, yeah, I'm where I need to be. For the people that aren't, they can either think about putting more money in or how they're investing it. When it comes to putting more money in, what are the ways that really, as you approach retirement at a high level, you could be thinking about?
So there's two main ways you can put money into super. There's what we call concessional or before tax contributions, or non-concessional after-tax contributions. Now, they both have annual limits. It's not a free-for-all. And when you're thinking about your before-tax or concessional contributions, really thinking about how much am I earning, what's my own marginal tax rate, because when I put money into super before tax, or a lot of our listeners might do what we call salary sacrifice, I'm only paying 15% tax on those contributions into super compared to my marginal tax rate. So depending on what I'm earning, that could be a really great tax effective way to boost my super. But for those on lower incomes, or if they're maxing out that annual limit, then I might want to look at after-tax contributions. That's got a high limit, and that can also be if I've received an inheritance, I've got some extra funds. That's the cap that I generally am trying to use to boost my super.
So that after-tax contribution is also for thinking about as you approach retirement. You might be wanting to move investments outside of super in. You might, as you said, come into an inheritance or a windfall. It's much more generous, isn't it?
Yeah, and we commonly do see that because often people want to simplify their situation as they approach retirement. So I don't want to deal with investment properties and tenants and all the goings on there. So I just want to set things up. So we often do see people want to move those assets inside super.
We also have, as you approach retirement, the ability to downsize your home and put proceeds of that into super. But Ruth, importantly, contributions isn't what does most of the work when it comes to your retirement balance, is it? Where does most of your savings actually come from, and how should you think about that then as you enter into retirement?
Yeah, when you look at your super balance at retirement or at any point, generally more than half of that is made up of the investment performances that the fund has delivered for you. So if you think of it like the contribution is like the fuel into the fire, but the real heat and the real power is coming from the flame, which is like the investment. So understanding how your superannuation is invested, what those investments are designed to do, and will that help you achieve what you want? It's really important to remember that when you're young, you've got a very small balance. You're not thinking about retirement. Your last thing you're worried about is whether there's market volatility affecting your superannuation balance. And you shouldn't be thinking about that when you're young. But as you get older, your balance is bigger. The stakes become a bit higher. So your mindset might change now about what it is you're wanting super to do. So maybe now you're not wanting to take as much risk anymore. You're becoming a little bit more protective of that balance that you've worked really hard for 30, 40 years to build up. And that's very understandable. So it is important to think about what kind of a return do I need to generate, number one, to get me where I want, and number two, to try and make the money last as long as I can during retirement. And then which particular investment options can help me achieve that.
But can we, even to that point of thinking about that balance, we see a lot of people almost get to retirement and almost shut up shop a bit with investments. Maybe, if I use your analogy, Ruth, maybe a bit concerned about being burnt by the investments. But what should they be thinking about? Because you might only be in your 60s, for example, when you're retiring.
Yeah, it's a very common thing that everyone looks at the finish line and they think of retirement as a finish line, where that's just the start of another chapter of your life. And I often like to say that you're often retired as long as you worked. And I love to let that sit because that's a quite confronting thing. I need and I want my super to last me for 20, 30 years. And so I need to take that into consideration when I'm investing my super. So not just, I want to retire at 60. I need my money to last me till I'm 90. So having that investment time frame, I still need my money working for me and attracting some growth to help fund my retirement.
Wonderful. So a lot of tools we've already talked about. We've talked about the retirement forecaster. You also have, we talked about contributions, and we have great contributions calculators. For investments, we have investment profile tool, which helps you maybe get a bit of an understanding of what sort of investor you are. You get through all of this part of your journey. You've been planning, you've been growing. You get to a point that's your retirement. Now, Ruth, before we talk about what you can actually think about doing, what we often see with these events is that people might come with aspirations of having an early retirement, but what's the reality we tend to see?
Look, retirement can sometimes come unexpectedly for a lot of people. Maybe your health isn't quite where you wanted. Maybe you faced a redundancy. There's a lot of things to be mindful of. No plan will always work out perfectly, so you do have to be agile. But when you get there, it is important to note that you have so much flexibility with what that superannuation can do for you. There is a lot of questions that come through the programme around, what do I need to do with my super when I retire? You don't need to do anything. If you retire before your spouse is earning a good income, leave your super there if you don't need to start drawing it down. It will still be invested and it will sit there earning for you until you're ready to start taking your superannuation. So option number one is do nothing with it until you're ready to do something with it. The other thing to think about is, well, when you want to start accessing it, there are different ways that you can structure it then. Probably the least common way is to just take the odd lump sum out as you need it. Okay, I'm going to put 20 grand in my bank account. I'll do a withdrawal for 20 grand and then I'll see how long that lasts me. That is an option, and it's one that a few people will take. But I think the most common way to structure your superannuation during retirement is generally through the income accounts or the income stream. And that's where you're physically moving your money from one account to another. It's still with your super fund. You get to dictate how much money comes out of there, how it's invested. You still can access lump sums. So you might say, I want the super fund to give me 40 grand a year from this product and I'll have it in monthly installments. But, every Christmas, it's a bit of a pricey time. We like to do a holiday. I might take an extra 20 as a lump sum. The beautiful thing about that product is if your circumstances changed or for some reason you need more or less, you can change the amount you've picked, or you can completely revert it back to an accumulation style account if you don't need the money anymore. There is also a product called a lifetime pension, which is designed for those individuals who probably want something a bit more certain, doesn't give you as much flexibility, but there are some options there. And you should be talking to one of our financial advisors or your own trusted financial advisor about which blend of those options would work for you. And I said blend intentionally because you can use all of them in a way as well.
Well, and we talk about retirement and how much you need and how it may look being very unique to every individual. And it's the same with how you choose to use your super. It's going to be unique to you. And we also in the program talk about how you have that alongside potentially the age pension or other investments you have outside of super. But Kane, I'll come to you for what's actually my favourite part of the program, and I'm coming to you intentionally because of a beautiful story you have with your own dad. We go through all of this because we want our members to thrive in their retirement. When we talk about thriving in retirement, what do we mean and how do you actually see this playing out for your dad?
Sure. So again, when it comes to retirement, as we all know, so many people do, and rightly so, they focus on the money and have I got enough, but they don't stop to think, what am I actually going to do with myself in retirement, and how am I going to keep myself mentally active, socially active, because I turn work off. That's my work friends. That's my purpose to get out of bed. I've got to find a new purpose, a new reason, new interests and hobbies. And I love with my dad to keep himself mentally active. He's right into his footy tipping. He does fantasy football teams. So I love that keeps him engaged and mentally active. But then on the social side, I love that every Thursday morning he goes down to a favourite coffee shop. He's got a group of mates who are all retired, and they all go down there every Thursday morning. They get their coffee, have some donuts, and they'll be there for a couple of hours just discussing world issues, whatever's on their mind, finding out about each other's history and past. And Dad's been doing that for years now, and I've even joined him on one of those Thursday morning sessions. So it's fantastic.
But Ruth, we do talk about that thriving in retirement is, as Kane's really said, it's not just about the financial. What are those key things that we say you really need to consider to be thriving?
Thriving is not being rich. That's the
or
first
rich in
thing.
other ways.
It's being rich in other ways. So if I think about thriving in retirement, is it any different to thriving in life? Thriving during your working life. For me, thriving means I can go to bed at night and fall asleep without worrying about my electricity bill, without worrying about, the next rates bill that comes in or the cost of fuel going to really inhibit what I'm going to do. It's having enough financial freedom to put your head on the pillow and not have that financial worry beside you all night keeping you awake. It doesn't necessarily have to translate into 5-star cruises around the world,
unless they come through footy tipping.
Unless you have a windfall through footy tipping. So thriving in retirement means having enough financial freedom to look after your health properly, to look after, as Kane said, your social well-being, your mental well-being properly. And you need to decide, what does thriving look like for you? And for some people, it will be fancy cruises. That won't be for me. For me, it's being able to go to bed at night with peace in my heart that if I do get an expensive electricity bill or it is a particularly cold night, that I don't have to just necessarily be focused on scrimping and scraping. There is something there.
Thank you both for bringing to life what we've been going around the country and delivering for the last 12 months, but we're actually really levelling up over the next 6 months. So we encourage all of you, hopefully through this, we've given you some new questions to think about, but we're also giving you a focus on, yes, there's planning, yes, there's things that you need to think about with growing and preparing yourself for retirement, but it's really also thinking about how you're going to thrive. For more, jump onto our website, look at our other podcast episodes, look at our webinar series, or come and meet us at one of the events we'll be having around the country. Now, this podcast isn't over yet. We will be back to talk about the main questions that you actually ask us at those events. We look forward to seeing you soon.